Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for being here. And I'm Gene Masuda, council member. And I hope what I can do right now is have a moment of silence for what happened in Saugus High School today. There were reported at least 2 individuals that have died from that tragedy. So please join me with a moment of silence. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I want to thank Salle College Preparatory for hosting tonight's meeting. And I want to introduce to you LaSalle's Vice President for Advancement, Kevin Delaney.
Thank you, Councilmember Gene Masuda, and welcome everyone. We're so excited and thrilled to be able to host this on a regular basis for District 4. Again, my name is Kevin Delaney, class of '89. I'm the Vice President for Advancement here at LaSalle. LaSalle has served the greater Pasadena community since 1956, graduating classes from 1960, all the way until the year 2020, where you'll hear from one of our current students, Queen Camille Kennedy, later on in the program. So please enjoy your evening and welcome to LaSalle. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I want to introduce my field rep, Noreen Sullivan. She's right back there. You see her waving? We also have K-Pass. They are right over there. And there's someone else over back there. And you're on television if you don't know it. The bad news is if you're with someone that you shouldn't be with, just kind of cover your face a little bit. Okay, I want to introduce our wonderful staff that we have here. First of all, I want to start off with our city manager, Steve Mermel. There he is. I don't know if the police chief is here yet, but he will be speaking. John Perez, Chief Perez. Our Public Informations Officer, Lisa Dadarian, right back there. Economic Development Department, our business section, Ruth Martinez. It's right here. And we have Jeff Kuhn from Public Works, and he's going to do a presentation later on for parks, our parks improvements. Where are you? He's right over there. Also speaking tonight we have Kevin Duffy. Kevin, where are you? Kevin is one of the most successful commercial realtors in Pasadena, commercial-wise. And we spend so much time complaining about residential. So Kevin took Noreen Sullivan and I on a tour, and it was a real exciting tour about our commercial properties. So we knew it was something that we wanted you to learn about. So that's why we invited Kevin today. Okay, if there are any District 4 commissioners, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Okay, we got a very, very important special guest today. Please welcome the 2020 Rose Queen, Camille Kennedy. I found out something that Queen Camille speaks Japanese, and I saw her speaking it. So, Camille-san.
はい。
こんばんは。
こんばんは。
お元気ですか？
元気です。はい。
この会議に来てくれてありがとう。
どういたしまして。
That was good evening. How are you? I'm fine. Thank you for being at our meeting. And she said,
You're welcome.
you're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, Queen Camille.
Hello, thank you everyone for having me tonight. It's wonderful to be here. So I'm a senior here at Salle College Preparatory, and it is an absolute honor to be the 2020 Rose Queen and be able to represent not only my school, but Pasadena, my community. I've been a Pasadena resident my entire life. I've grown up here, and so being a part of the Royal Court is a fantastic opportunity to give back to the city that has raised me. A couple of the events that we are in the thick of right now is we participate in a lot of community outreach and community service. We reach out to senior citizen homes, we reach out to schools, we meet with children and other individuals who are from all different walks of life, and it was really such a well-rounded experience that provides us the opportunity to grow as individuals and to grow as public speakers and be able to meet new people and put those experiences into our future. So a little bit about me. In addition to being a student here, I do speak Japanese. I spent my sophomore year of high school in Japan. I lived in Tokyo for 10.5 months, and I attended a private all-girls high school in order to further my education in Japanese. And so because of that, because of LaSalle allowing me to do such a crazy kind of endeavor, I now hope to pursue university in Tokyo. I hope to go back and pursue a degree in either linguistics or social sciences and communication skills. So that's a bit about me for this evening. I don't know if any of you are familiar with our theme this year. The theme of the Rose Parade is called The Power of Hope, and we do have some posters back there that represent the design of the theme. So the Power of Hope, there's a few different components that we really like to signify it as. The Power of Hope is personal. What the power of hope means to me is not going to be the same thing that it means to the rest of you in this room tonight. It's a customizable feeling, but we all put it forward in order to promote happiness and growth and positivity. And so one of our most defining characteristics this year is that hope is never-ending and continuous, and with hope, we use hope to aspire to do better, but in turn, we can inspire others to reach higher for their goals. So that's just a little bit about the theme. I hope you all come out or turn on the TV on New Year's Day to watch the parade. I'll be waving. The other 6 girls on the court will be waving. And I really appreciate you having me tonight, so thank you so much.
Queen Camille, this is from all of us from District 4. Thank you so much. You honor us with your presence.
Thank you so much.
Okay, she has to get going. Don't forget, she's a student and she has homework to do, okay? All right. We're going to start off with Chief John Perez, our police chief, and he's going to tell us really pretty much what's happening.
Yes, absolutely. Good evening to everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. And so I'm just coming from, hey, how you doing, man? Good to see you. People I know, people I owe money to. So I'm just coming from a graduation on the west end at the Rose Bowl of our Citizens Police Academy of about 75 people, so it's pretty cool to have everybody there. So if you haven't been, it's a great course to go through and to become ambassador for our community and really learn more about your city and your police department. So I'll get straight into crime. It's always good to talk about crime globally, more from a neighborhood standpoint, and really get at the quality of life issues that we all worry about, I think more than crime sometimes. This has been a difficult day today. We saw what happened over in Santa Clarita and the loss of life with an active shooter, and we're always concerned, and our prayers goes out to the families that have lost some children today and some of the difficulties that we deal with. And so as we think about what we should be doing as community members is really to try to pay attention to what's happening in our society. And there is a way to get at active shooters. There is a way to do this, and I'll talk about it briefly. We went through this shortly after 9/11 when we became better partners in our community with our Muslim communities. And after 9/11, we built some very good relationships around the country that really helped us to get at investigations prior to events happening. And I believe the majority of events that were going to happen never occurred because of our partnerships and the cooperation we gained in the community throughout this country. And over the years, we've done very well with that. We're back there again. This time it's a little bit different. And this time, once again, I think we need a stronger community to start paying attention to the red flags, the hazards, the things that go on in our communities to ensure we're reporting them. Over the past year, we have 3 incidents in which people reported to us concerns in the community. And all 3 of those incidents, when we investigated them, some in the middle of the night, we arrested one person for the threats that they had made and seized their weapons that they had. We had another individual where we were able to get them the mental health help that they needed. And on a third one, we were able to seize a long rifle and take a person into custody. So I know this works. And I know we could get over these active shooters. We're tired of it. We as people are tired of this type of violence around the country. However, I do realize that as a community working together and connecting, we could get through this as well. And what I'll add, in the back you will see the Crime Stopper cards. They look like this. If you haven't grabbed one, you should. If you don't want to make yourself known when you call the police with something that's concerned, you see something happening at somebody's home or at a business, you can call Crime Stoppers and they'll get us the information as well. So I really do hope you take one of these cards and you have them in the back. That'd be important. So when it comes to crime, this area, we have about 4 burglaries in the immediate area over the last month. We also have about 4 auto burglaries that occurred. And so these are always a concern to us, but the crime around the city has dropped by double digits in almost every category. That's not the only area in which we focus on. Our biggest challenge has been thefts. We've had nearly 30 thefts over the last month of people taking various things from porches, around from people's unlocked cars, from garages. These type of situations really are a concern for all of us. So you really want to make sure if you go shopping, especially during the holidays, we try to make sure we don't leave our valuables where people could see them, your iPads, your phones, all these type of things when you go shopping. Take a look how your car looks if you were a burglar, if you walk away from it. Take a look in the window and see what you see. And you can help yourself by moving some of those or securing them better. Same if you're going to multiple locations to shop. Try to bring your bags, if you put them into the trunk, it is safer. If you go home and go back to the store, that's even better. But you have to be careful with those kind of things that we're dealing with. So outside of the crime numbers, I think we're doing really well. We do have to be concerned with traffic. I do ask people at this time of the year to slow down. Don't be distracted inside the cars. We have a lot of things on our mind. And we really have to make sure we stay focused. We're almost driving for other people, aren't we? We think we're doing a pretty good job, but we're worried about those people who are distracted next to us, to the left or to the right. So we have to pay attention to those things as often as we can. The other issue we're always concerned about is homelessness around the city. Some people told me that earlier today, some residents, it looks good on South Lake, it looks good along Foothill and some other areas. It's a constant effort and a holistic approach with our city departments, not just the police department. We are not trying to criminalize homelessness. It's very important we know that. Thank you for that. But maybe to get a boo or two, there's also a challenge to make sure that we get at the criminal aspects of homelessness as well. So that is difficult for us. And we put together, and thanks to the city manager in doing this for us, we have a citywide committee called the Homeless Project Committee. And we are trying to develop a model citywide that will work for us. One that we are experimenting, failing, having some success, and trying to do outreach for people. At the same time, ensuring that we're not allowing the crime to occur. The crime for homeless people is going up everywhere, and that is homeless suspects, homeless victims. And we have to focus on that to give them a better quality of life. And we're trying to really work on not just getting them the help they need, but teaching them the rules of the game of where they should be. And we have to understand that of the homeless count that occurred, there was 700 homeless people. And I believe in that number. But we do have another set of homeless people that come in for the day then leave. A larger, group that's not as big as the 700, but they come through the city, younger people, and they run around town trying to make money where they can. Our challenges with this population really is about two things. Number one, we have a small set of people of less than 70 that frequently make contact with the police. They are in front of that Starbucks where you don't like them to be there because they're aggressive, or that grocery store. They're the ones that we have to focus most of our time on. And so we're trying to really work on them more often. If it requires us to make these arrests, we will. There was one a few months back, maybe about 8 months ago, that was causing us a lot of problems in one part of the city. So I had the officers focus on this individual. In 24 hours, we arrested him 5 times. Now, you might say to yourself, wait a second, that seems unfair. Well, we did this for a reason, because they were doing some very lewd things around the area that were uncalled for by this individual. And by the 5th time that we arrested him in 24 hours, the judge mandated him to services for 8 months, which is great. That's what we wanted. We couldn't get him to go on his own. We couldn't take him on our own, but now we had a court give us that ability. He gets out later on this month, so I'm hoping the best for him when he gets out. And what's happening on the street is really the level of methamphetamine usage, that we have a lot of homeless people that are using meth. And if we could get in there and stop some of these dealers from doing that, I think it'll clear up the landscape for us to really work on outreach efforts. But it's hard when you have drug dealers that we can't find. There's not many out there, but there's enough that they are really getting the drug of choice in meth to these homeless people, and that's what they're using to medicate themselves. It's a very difficult place to be, because when we come across the homeless, we're no longer dealing with somebody who's just homeless. Now we have somebody whose mind has been altered. They see the police uniform. We're trying not to use force, but they may be aggressive towards us. So we've been training our officers on how to communicate better and how to use different type of methods. Over the last 18 months, we've reduced use of force by 30%. Which is fantastic for us. It means it's safer for the people we come across, and it's safer for the police officers as well. So we're also continuing this development with our police officers and making sure our communication style is more of a cooperative nature than one of a police nature, where people just sometimes don't want to cooperate with us. So that's our efforts. That's where we are, and we're evaluating the homeless effort every single month, and we're fortunate to have the fire department, the housing, code enforcement. It's one collective team, and we're going to continue to do this project as long as we can in building a model that works for us. We are not going to solve the homeless issue anytime soon. However, what we can do is provide an outlet for people who want help. We could try to make sure that drug dealers are not doing their business out in the street and making the problem worse. We could provide the services they need to provide a certain level of quality of life they deserve in the situation they are in. So that's our effort. It's not to resolve the homeless. If we do that in the process, fantastic. But if not, I know we have some goals that we could meet, and I like what's happening. So hopefully as I report back, you hold me accountable as your police chief to ensure I'm doing those things. And at this point, there's questions I could answer. It'd be great. Your hand went up first.
Okay. Well, I'm interested to know what state is trying to secure facilities, housing for homeless people.
Yes. So the question is what are we doing to provide more housing for many of the homeless that are in our community? I think there's many efforts going on, and it would probably have the housing director here to really provide all the different avenues and the different locations. But what I could tell you is that we have one aspect from the police department, the reintegration, where people are coming out of prison, and we're providing services for them. And over the last year, we have housed 37 people alone by the services that we have in a grant from the state, specifically to the locations, the cold weather shelters, the Union Station, and many of the other locations. Some of them take process. Some of them take vouchers that we have to process people through. It is frustrating at times to stop some of the homeless people and know they have vouchers for housing and they haven't used them. How do we get them to use them? That's one of the challenges. I don't know if you want to talk to the housing.
Chief, we're going to have Q&A after all the speakers, and we will all be up here.
Sorry about that.
No,
I broke the rules.
No, you did a great job. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Did he do a great job? I do want to touch on something that the chief did not talk about, and that's the HOPE teams. we have 3 HOPE teams, and it's a police officer and a LA County mental health person. These HOPE teams, this is all they do is they help the homeless get services, information about where to get housing, and right now they're working one-on-one with the homeless. So I'm very, very proud of that group of those teams. Okay, let me get my glasses. Okay, make sure I get mine in order. Next, from Public Works, we have Jeff Kuhn to do a presentation on our parks. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. We've wanted you to be here so long because, you know, we have a lot of questions about parks, our improvements, what are we doing, and what needs to be done. So thank you so much for being here.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I'm just going to give an update on a couple of parks projects in the district of a council member. So the first one is Hamilton Park, Phase 1. Basically, we just finished construction of this project. We did the backstop for the ball fields, chain link fence around tennis courts, the field, and then also a shade structure over the bleachers, concrete walkway around the park, and then a tennis court resurfacing. The only thing we're trying to finish up is getting the lights installed at the tennis court at this moment. It's just a lead time on those lights. But the park is open at this moment. Here's some before pictures of all the worn down and the dugouts and backstops. And these are the updated pictures on the new backstops, some picnic shelter, I mean, not picnic shelter, but shade structure over the bleachers and dugout area. Go ahead. So our next project that I have up is Victory Park Restroom. This one's finishing up grant construction, not construction yet, but it will be starting construction in January approximately. Basically, we'll be demolishing the existing restroom building and constructing a new restroom building. The new one will have 3 times as many stalls as the existing ones. It will also have a concession stand and room, meeting room. In addition, we'll also have a 500 square foot accessory building, which will have electrical closet, storage and equipment for the park's maintenance staff, storage facility for the recreational staff. And then additional to that, we'll be resurfacing the parking lot with new striping, curb, and ADA signage. During construction, we'll have temporary facilities when the restrooms are in construction. This is a quick rendering of the new restroom that will be coming on board. As far as schedule goes, we're looking at starting construction in January of 2020. We're hoping to finish the whole construction by July 2020. The third project I'll be talking about is just briefly is Viña Vieja pickleball courts. This is in the preliminary stage of the project. It's a dedicated pickleball courts in the city that we will plan to install. We're looking at 12 new courts, some shaded area, some additional parking, and right now we're funded for design and portion of construction. So we'll have it additional funding coming up in FY 2021. So this one is located by the south of the dog park, basically at Viña Vieja. So go ahead and click the next one. So that's the existing, the facility of the whole city lot. The north side, half of that north side is the dog park, and then the proposed area will be further south. So that's SE easement. That's a SE easement that we lease for our park site next to the dog park. And that's the proposed location of the pickleball courts facility. And this is just a preliminary stage of the design that we went to council with. As far as schedule goes, we're looking, hopefully you could come out to our first community meeting in December 5th, which will be hosted at Victory Park. This will give, if you could provide us with inputs on the park design so we could gather as much input as possible so we could design something that the community would want for this pickleball court. The next community meeting we're looking at is January after that, and then we'll go to Parks and Rec Commission, and then we'll do environmental for this site and project. And the final project we have on board is just the Lamanda Library Pocket Park. This is a renovation of the park behind the Lamanda Library. We're planning to put some new playground, tot lot equipment, shade over the playground, decorative paving, picnic area, green space, public arts, and this project is fully funded for design and construction. This is just a quick sketch or design of the park behind the library. As far as the schedule goes, right now we went to Parks and Rec Commission already. We're in the process of a conditional use permit application submitted, and we're hoping to get the design completed by June 2020, entitlement, and then hopefully start construction soon after. Other than that, I'm done with the park project updates. Thank you.
Okay. How many of you ever played pickleball? Let me tell you, it's really popular. I have not played it, but when we had our community meeting, and it was just amazing, the people that came out that are playing pickleball. So watch that and watch the community meeting that's going to be coming up that Jeff was talking about. Okay, Kevin Duffy. He's going to talk about commercial property in East Pasadena. It's really kind of an exciting thing because I never got to see this kind of a presentation before. Kevin showed Noreen and I when we went around in his car about a month ago. Thank you, Kevin.
So it doesn't look like this is going to let me move here. So I'm not a Pasadena resident, but I've been working in Pasadena for the last 30 years, so it feels like I'm a Pasadena resident. So to give you, the focus tonight is on Northeast Pasadena, but I want to give you a little bit of context of kind of where Northeast Pasadena fits in the overall Pasadena market. So Pasadena, and this is office product, is about 8.3 million square feet in the entire city. Vacancy today is about 13.5%. So a strong market, but could be better with a little bit more tenant velocity. If you want to make a comparison against our neighboring cities, Burbank, for example, is at about 9.5% vacancy, and probably with some recent deals with Netflix and Warner Brothers and Disney is probably going to about a 6% vacancy. So once you get to the single-digit vacancy, you typically start seeing speculative office buildings being developed. That just means the local market is doing very, very well. Burbank specifically, it's all about content creation, so you're seeing a tremendous amount of growth over in that marketplace. Glendale, not necessarily declared major. You're seeing a lot of development on the multifamily side, and a lot of buildings selling in Glendale. Glendale vacancy is about 16.5%, so still has a ways to go. So we're really right in between at our 13.5% in between those two cities. But if you look in terms of what's happening in Pasadena, we started tracking, as we were coming out of the recession, the number of buildings that we're selling. So since 2013 to today, so roughly a 7-year period, there's been $2.4 billion worth of buildings that have sold. So I think that helps Steve with balancing his budget here, because obviously every time a building sells, the tax roll increases, and that's more revenue for the city. So tremendous amount of sales, and there's a reason for it. Really, Pasadena was built for a 20-year period on financial, banking, Bank of America, Countrywide, the mortgage business, and that business is not coming back, certainly not coming back in the near future. So It's really transitioning to technology, healthcare, engineering, life science companies. So we're seeing that change. And with that change comes a need to repurpose a lot of the older buildings. And we're seeing that dramatically up in the Northeast Pasadena area. So if we look at just since December of last year, I've got the stat here, there's been $75 million worth of sales in Northeast Pasadena in office buildings. So there's effectively 8 buildings, office buildings in Northeast Pasadena, and 7 of the 8 have sold. And then 2 of the buildings one of the buildings that hasn't sold is actually on the market right now. Another building that sold 2 years ago is back on the market because it was fully leased, and that's going to be roughly another $100 to $110 million of sales, probably in the next 6 months over in the Northeast Pasadena area. So just it almost feels like you could look at Pasadena and say we're almost back to the future, because Northeast Pasadena was boroughs occupied a lot of the space up in this area, and JPL. They had a big presence up here. So that went away, and the Northeast Pasadena pocket of vacancy was hovering in the mid 20% range for a long time. There was just no reason to come up to this area. That's all changed. You've got a lot of buildings that have sold more in the Lake Avenue Central Business District. So with those sales, all those owners are coming in and they're fixing up the buildings. Tech lounges, fitness centers, conference centers, collaborative areas, spec suites, new restrooms, new corridors, and they're doing that. The reality is that's pushing rents up. So when rents get pushed up in more of the central business district with the more traditional professional offices companies, then that pushes a lot of the tenants out to this area. And one of the attractions, or there's a couple attractions in Northeast Pasadena. You've got your rail. You have access to real strong amenities up in this area. You've got good executive housing, and with the Gold Line being extended, you're bringing a lot of the support from the San Gabriel Valley. So a lot of things are positive in this particular area. If you look at some of the project here, right up at the top of the map there's 2 buildings. Over on the right-hand side here, the photos are 2 buildings that were just sold about 3 months ago. So the developer of those buildings is coming in and they're doing a kind of repurposing of those buildings, trying to create that environment that is going to attract the millennials, the next generation of employees that wants a indoor-outdoor collaborative type of an environment. So they bought those 2 buildings, again, up and over the hill on Bradley at 2923 and 2947, and they bought them for $30 million, and they're probably going to spend another $6 million on the renovation in hopes of attracting larger tenants that want a large floor plate type of an environment. Next door to them, if there's a lot of people that were up here looking at the pictures earlier, next door to that it was an old Avery Dennison research facility. That building has been purchased by a company called First Financial Credit Union. So they're going to move their corporate offices from West Covina into that 67,000 square foot building. They spent, I think they purchased that building for about $20 million, and they're probably going to spend $150 a foot, so another $8 million on renovating that building. But that's good, because those are good quality jobs, and anybody looking at a building as a user as opposed to a tenant is investing not necessarily for the next 5 years when their lease expires, but investing for the next 25, 30, and 50 years. So that's a very positive occurrence. Across the street in the last building there at 3100 New York Drive, it has Leon Max, their clothing manufacturer, in there. That building was sold about 2 years ago, renovated by a development group out of San Francisco, and then we just backfilled that with a company called Gemalto. Gemalto is currently located in that building right there. So their decision to stay in Northeast Pasadena was based on the intellectual capital that is currently in Pasadena between JPL and Caltech and Idea Lab. They couldn't pick up those well-paying jobs and move them out to Rancho Cucamonga because the employees would not follow them out in that direction. So they actually are moving from this building to 3100 New York Drive, and now that building is on the market for sale. So, you know, we're playing a little bit of a shell game, but it's all positive because basically you're taking older buildings and there's a lot of reinvestment in those buildings that is going to attract, again, the next generation of tenants. This building right over here, it's currently occupied by Gemalto, who was purchased by a company called Thales. But that building many years ago was owned by World Vision. World Vision sold it to a company called Cogent Technology out of South Pasadena. They did retinal and fingerprint scanning and facial recognition. Again, good, high-paying engineering jobs. Cogent sold their technology to 3M Corporation, who essentially inherited the real estate. 3M Corporation then sold the technology to Gemalto, and the technology has continued to advance. And then Gemalto ended up owning the property. But through the course of the last 20 years, nobody's really reinvested in that building. So when we sold the property in December of last year to a company called Montana Avenue Capital, they have plans for it's probably going to end up being an $8 to $10 million renovation of that building. So it's 3 buildings, roughly 148,000 square feet, 7 acres, but they're going to create an environment, as I described before, where the employees can work inside. They're going to have roll-up doors. They're going to have outdoor courtyard areas. They're going to have tech lounges and so forth. So that is going to continue to attract that next generation of tenant. A lot of other things happening from a tenant perspective. So at the old Burroughs building at 465 Halsted, where the 24-hour fitness is, there's 3 technology companies in there. One is called OE Waves. They do microwave technology. It's a spinoff of JPL. Next tenant is a company called Giant Magellan Telescope Organization. So they are building a $1 billion telescope in Chile, and a lot of the employees from there are Caltech employees. So those, again, are very high-paying jobs. And then I think they finished their tenant improvements about 30 days ago. In that building, we just leased 50,000 square feet to a company called GM Cruise. Cruise is the autonomous car division for General Motors. They were not in this area. So what we're now seeing is companies from other areas are seeing the cluster of the growth of technology and intellectual capital in Pasadena, and they're being attracted to that. It's almost like the like-mind scenario, and they do like to cluster in the area. So there's still a lot of work to go in Northeast Pasadena. But from my perspective, seeing the amount of sales, seeing the amount of reinvestment in this area is exciting to me, and it should be exciting to you because it's all positive and it will continue to attract jobs. Thank you.
So, if we can have the speakers all come up and our city manager, and we will take any questions that you have. And after the meeting is over, we will stay to take questions one-on-one, okay? Okay. Do you have a question for the chief?
No, for you.
Okay.
The most recent homeless count is between 500 and 700, and the top reason for people becoming homeless at 30% of those is just simply losing their jobs. There's some great permanent supportive housing in other districts like Marks Place, Centennial Square, but here in District 4 we don't have any permanent supportive housing.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, because I know some people probably, and I know this from Next Door app, there's a lot of people that are concerned about this issue, and we look at it from a different way, but I'm wondering if your office could be instrumental in getting people who are interested in finding someplace in District 4 where we don't have any permanent supportive housing here, where we could get community involvement and find sites where it could be a possibility.
Well, I will support that. And the one time that it came up to put it in the next to Ability First, I was against that because that was, first of all, there's contamination in the soil, but it's zoned open space, and I was against that. But I'm open to listen to where we can put it. But don't forget, when you talk about permanent supportive housing, when I asked our housing director about how much does it come out to per unit, he was using like 500,000, 600,000 per unit costing construction plus land costs. So you help us figure it out.
But I'm wondering if, in order to get people together, how we can do that in District 4. I mean, is there some
The conversion?
Yeah, and with the conversion.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it. And Noreen Sullivan has, is that a microphone? Okay, she has the microphone for people that have questions.
Good evening. Last meeting, we talked about St. Luke's Hospital. You're going to get a update. I think it was the week after. So just looking for the update on St. Luke's Hospital and its future.
Ruth might actually have some information on that.
So we've reached out to the property owner, which is Denley Investments, and they still have plans to do a medical reuse of not only the hospital, but some of the adjacent buildings. And when we met with them probably midsummer, that was still their plan. We haven't heard anything current, but that was still their plan as of 4 or 5 months ago. So.
Is there any possibility that the city could acquire St. Luke's Hospital and turn it into a mental health facility? It would be built out for that already. I was originally told that it had earthquake retrofit issues, but I would think that that would still be, even fixing that would be much cheaper than building something from scratch, and it already has hospital rooms in it.
Right, so first of all, it's not suitable to operate as a hospital anymore because of the structure. It doesn't meet current code. The city doesn't provide that service, mental health services. Potentially, it's something we could talk to the county about. The city doesn't have the resources to acquire that and convert it. We don't operate mental health facilities.
Gene, as you know, since the Pasadena City Council passed a grid access fee a few months ago, businesses in Pasadena have seen a huge increase in their power bill. I know at my work the electric bill has more than doubled. Seeing as how the council feels a 5-year increase is a fair amount for landlords to raise the rent on their tenants, will you, Gene Masuda, pledge not to support or vote yes on any fee or tax that raises a service provided by the city of Pasadena to more than 5% annually?
Howie, we had this discussion before. And first of all, the electric company, our water and electric portion of it, they have to make the funds to pay for their employees. They have fixed costs and other things to pay for. So we really leave it up to their recommendation to the council. We have a long discussion. So I'm not going to stand here and say, yes, Howie, I can do that. That wouldn't be fair. But we do have that discussion. And I'll tell you, the city manager is right here, and he knows all about those financial situations because they run it by him all the time. So, Steve, you want to express your opinion?
Well, I'd be happy to touch on that. What the speaker was talking about is we recently implemented what's called a grid access fee. The power industry is changing, and larger companies, us as individuals with our homes, we can put solar, but for the most part, our only option is to either have solar or get your power from Pasadena Water and Power. Some of our larger customers are looking to potentially leave our system, leaving the rest of us with the cost of maintaining the infrastructure that when they need it, they can call upon it. So we implemented what's called a grid access fee, if you will. It's a cost associated with what does it cost to provide you power. We used to build all that into the rate. We pulled it out of the rate, and it's a separate bill. In some cases, as in the speaker's case, he owns a commercial property, but he doesn't use a lot of electricity, so as a percentage, it's a high percentage of his overall bill. That's an anomaly. What we're really trying to do is make sure that our rates are broken down into discrete components so that anyone leaving the city doesn't stick the rest of the city with the cost of their infrastructure.
Howie, I hear a lot of questions, and they're emailed to me about the water side and why the cost goes up. And just so you all know, we're losing money on the water side because we're doing such a nice job with our conservation program. We're using water at the level of the 1950s. So, same employees, they want a raise, you want the water, you want the electricity, and we want, and our residents demand that we have those services for them. You know that, Howie. When you go and turn that water on, you want it on. When you turn that electricity, flip the switch, you want it on. So we're always working hard to get those things done. Thank you. Question?
So I have two questions. One's for Gene, one's for the chief. Gene, can you provide us an update on the Albertsons location? And Chief, you spoke about the incident in Saugus, but I'd like to know, what is the city, how is the police department working with Pasadena Unified School District with the incident that happened at Washington?
Okay. What was the first question?
Albertsons. Albertsons.
Albertsons, oh my God. Most of you know I have met with the owner, Howard Chan. At least, we met twice. I actually met with Ruth Martinez sitting there with Howard. And I've never met a more difficult person to deal with, honestly. Not really a good business person, in my opinion. He told Ruth and I to find some national companies to come there, like Starbucks or, whatever, anyone you can think of. And we said, Howard, you got to fix up the shopping center first. Then maybe they'll come. It's not the other way. So, you know where we're talking about, the Albertson Shopping Center, the former? Okay. Then I met him again at Panera Bread. Okay? You know where that shopping center is. He was 45 minutes late. But that's okay. We had an opportunity to talk. I said, Howard, this is your competition here. Look around. You can see, Bank of America, and, you can see all the other restaurants that are right there. And, I said, this is it. He said, they're not competition, just find me some national companies. So that's the mentality that we're dealing with. So now we have the city assistant prosecutor working on it. And it's actually gone to court. And his attorney, and I can tell you this because this is public knowledge now, that his attorney has been asking for continuances. Fine, because he's been saying that they're going to be doing more work and more work. So that's where it is right now. It's in the court system, and our assistant city prosecutor is like a bulldog. And he's not going to let it go. He's going to work really hard on this because he knows that Mr. Chan has not come through in the past. Noreen has had code enforcement down there so often. I mean, she had code enforcement on speed dial. That's how many times she had to call them about the parking lot, the cracks in the asphalt, the lights not being on at night, the trash area. People were bringing things over there. So it's I've been on council for 8.5 years, and this has been a constant problem. Thank you.
Okay, and follow up. And I didn't talk about it earlier, this terrible look is for a purpose. We are raising money for men's cancer. And so No Shave November, if you go to the website, you could donate. We were trying to raise $10,000 for the cause, and we're up to about 65% already. Last month we raised over $7,000 for women's cancer with our Pink Patch event. So that's why you see this scruffy look, all right? And to answer this question, we're talking about Washington Middle School. correct? And earlier today, we did have an incident where a fifth grader brought a BB gun to school and shot 3 students with the BB gun. All superficial wounds. That's only a part of it. The students were not seriously hurt. However, after we found out about the incident, we did call the mother. The student was released from the school, and we in fact had the student and the mother come to the police department. They brought the BB gun, and he was in our facility for a few hours as we processed him, took his statement, wrote the reports, did our investigation, and at some point tonight he'll be released back to his mother most likely. So it's one of those situations where we work with the school pretty regularly to ensure that we're giving training to the school, not just the teachers and the staff, but it was about a month and a half ago I sat in with the superintendent and his staff to talk about emergency responses and how to train the executive staff and other people that are just essential to understand how we react to this. So it's important we have, again, a holistic view of the police department has a connection to the staff at the school district, and we're providing active shooter training as well as procedures and responses that we all want. So our kids are being taken care of and the right things are being done. So it was seriously a tragic event today that happened at Washington Middle School. A fifth grader should know better than to do this. And we have to work on this fifth grader because he has a long life in front of him to ensure he doesn't do this again. So it's much larger than just the event today. It's a lifelong travel for this young person to ensure they don't ever do this again. So it's a balance of the punishment, obviously. Do you incarcerate, put him in jail forever, or do you try to provide outreach and rehabilitation in his decision-making process? So we have to figure this out as we go forward. Does that answer your question, I hope? Okay.
I have a question about 2 of the properties that are in northeast Pasadena. One of them is the old Osh property, and what is the status of that? Or is there any future tenants or anybody moving into that area? And then the other question I have is regarding the demolition going on at the old Avon building. Do we already have a tenant moving or somebody moving in there has bought the property, or what is the status of that also?
Let me start with the Osh property. Well, maybe you better join me. But you know they moved out, and the Nell family owns it. And I met with, I believe his name is Peter, yes. Peter Nell, and what he told me was this, and maybe you can chime in here, Ruth, that since Osh left, and I miss Osh. I don't know but the rest of you, I just really used to use that place quite a bit. He doesn't believe that it's going to be retail again. And you know, that really hurts me because I think of maybe Ace or something like that coming over there and being a little bit of a bigger store like they did in South Pass. But it's a prominent piece of property, and we're just hoping that something that serves the community that can go over there. But I do know that the Nell family, they're very community-minded. They don't even want to see graffiti on the walls and things like that, so they're working really hard, and it's private. It's a private owner trying to work with realtors to get it rented, to get a good company in there long-term.
Yeah, and so just so you know, Lowe's purchased Osh and they closed the store. So Lowe's still has a lease on the site. And Lowe's is technically responsible to maintain the property. And they've kind of been a little bit of an absentee owner. So the Nell family has stepped up. And what we're doing now is we're sending code enforcement out there on a regular basis. Because you'll have folks parking, some homeless folks hanging out on the freeway side of the, which is the back side of the Osh. And the Nell family has now agreed to handle any of the maintenance. So anything we see, code enforcement directs it straight to the Nell family, which in turn will turn around and bill Lowe's for the cleanup and the maintenance of the site. So they're very aware of the site, and we need to do what we can to kind of keep an eye. And we're doing what we can to encourage Lowe's to sublease it or to get someone there to continue, at least try to put a tenant in or to develop it. So we are reaching out to Lowe's on a semi-regular basis as well.
I have heard that the Osh store in Pasadena
That may have been true, but OSH represented only 1% of Lowe's total value, so they made a business decision to close them all. Wanted to respond, if I may, briefly about the Avon property and what's going on there. So for people who don't know, Home Depot bought the property. They're currently in the building doing tenant improvements. So one of the big issues was, are they going to want to scrape the building and build a new building? These tend to be very large buildings, Home Depots. There were concerns about the historic nature of the building. In fact, it's going to the City Council this month to designate portions of the building as historic. The council member stepped in because we know from the people that live in the area, particularly to the north, there was concern about any new development on that site, what that might do to traffic. Councilmember Masuda pulled together a group of neighbors who worked with city staff and with the Home Depot team and really designed a project that's going to put more emphasis for the traffic to come in on Walnut, not off of Foothill. There'll be a raised median installed to prevent people from going into the neighborhood north of the property. And so they're in there doing tenant improvements right now. It'll be a Home Depot store. But then there'll be another portion that would be leased out to other users. They're talking to different potential tech and other type users. So it's more space than they need in totality. They need roughly about half of it, of the property.
Chief, what? Maybe I'll do it this way. Chief, can you talk about any frauds or scams that are taking place right now that people should be aware of? And then with holiday season coming up, some of the things that your staff will be looking at.
So a couple that really frustrate us is on your cell phone, right? You get those darn phone calls of people calling. There's not much we could do about those. The same that come to the house phone. There's very little investigations we could do on those and try to track the right phone numbers. During this holiday season, you will be getting phone calls. You will be at places where people want you to donate, in front of stores. Be very wary of these locations, of the organizations, and people on the phone asking for your credit card number. Don't give it up over the phone. You want to donate to the locations, to the organizations that you're familiar with. And there's great ones in Pasadena you're very familiar with, from Union Station to Friends in Need, to many other ones that are around. So do your research, have your focus, and don't let anybody throw you off your game. Know where you want your money to go, know the people that need help, and let's do it that way. People who give you a phone call, people that stop by the house, stay away from that. And if you call the police department to report that, we'll get out there to talk to the individuals about what they're doing as well.
District 4 resident and volunteer extraordinaire for the police department, and does a lot of stuff with the fraud department and does presentations and knows fraud inside out. So any questions afterwards, go to Tom. You have an organization. I'm volunteering Tom to make a presentation. He does great presentations.
Actually, I have a question for the chief, but I wanted to follow up on something he was talking about, especially at Christmas time, with charity solicitations. I used to prosecute charity fraud for many years. Whenever you get stuff in the mail, almost 95 cents out of every dollar that you give goes to a for-profit commercial fundraiser. So keep that in mind. I totally agree with you about doing local donations for local charities, because you can see the program. I did have a question for you. You mentioned a small subset of the homeless population in terms of the crime rate. What about, are you aware of any crimes? Because the goal is to get them into permanent supportive housing, and we have a number of those. Do you have any crime statistics for, say, Marv's Place, Centennial Place, any place where the formerly homeless are now living?
We have very, if any, type of crime out of those facilities, I could tell you. And a couple of weeks ago, I went over to the Fillmore Station and bought a cup of coffee and sat down with about 6 or 7 homeless people in a circle, and we talked for about half hour. And they know me. I will go by there every few months to talk to them. And, even when I talk to them, they just don't want to go get services. And it's a frustrating discussion we have back and forth. But they do have their lives they live, and they do report and tell me the concerns about crime and try to get officers over there to have more visibility so they have some type of quality of life. I think that's just as important as providing shelter, if you don't want it, to make sure you're living in a place where you feel safe.
But those that are actually sheltered, that are in the permanent supportive housing, there's no crime that you're aware of?
Very minimal.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. It's actually brought hope back to me and my wife as a new member of District 4, and that landlords are putting in money to their buildings to try and get young millennials and tech here. I think that's what this district needs rather than chasing revenue with big box stores. A side note, before I ask your question to the city manager, your minutes are on tape, so if you think Home Depot is just a little tenant improvement, you're mistaken. That's a massive remodel, and it's a historic building. So for you to say that and just brush it off, your minutes are here and everyone's watching you. To Kevin, do you know of any new development happening, new construction for a commercial space? As you see, they're putting money into these older buildings, but do you see new businesses moving into District 4 specifically?
We are, and as I mentioned earlier, the latest was the GM Cruise, but we are seeing a lot more tours up in this area. I mean, part of what's happening right now is you've got the key mantra with every company today is how do I create an environment to retain the best employees, and how do I recruit the best employees on a going forward basis? Because a 50-year-old employee is different than a 25-year-old employee. So there's this dance going on right now in terms of trying to create the right environment. What Northeast Pasadena has that's called the Central Business District on Lake, or West Pasadena has, is those are 18,000 square foot boxes. Those are square buildings that were built in the 70s and the 80s, and they're now being repurposed. But what Northeast Pasadena has is they've got scale. You've got larger footprints because there's more land in Northeast Pasadena, so you get the economies of scale. So a tenant that would otherwise fit on 2 floors at 35 North Lake, for example, can fit on 1 floor in an efficient environment in Northeast Pasadena. And I think that's not just necessarily a short-term wave. That's the future of how businesses are going to operate. Myself, I'm with a company called CBRE out of Glendale. We're a worldwide company, but we're in a 1920s former Masonic temple. So we've taken an old building that hadn't been occupied in a 40-year period, and we've repurposed that building with 18-foot ceilings, a creative environment, and we're basically, I don't have a desk, I don't have an office, I don't have a cubicle. So it's really a free addressing model, and we're seeing more and more of those companies going to that model. And I think Northeast Pasadena really plays to that. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of that next generation of tenant and how they operate and how they look at space needs is going to seriously look at Northeast Pasadena going forward. And it's going to help with developments like this because it is creating that environment. The developers of these projects have that vision of what the next generation is looking for.
I still don't see where the Home Depot project fits in with that vision of bringing in high-paying jobs back. And I don't know if it's going to generate that kind of sales tax that you might be looking at. I mean, for the most part, if the people who are going to shop at Home Depot have resale numbers, there's going to be no sales tax generated, if I'm not mistaken. So how does Pasadena, specifically Northeast Pasadena, gain from having a Home Depot?
Well, first of all, I don't think Home Depot is the type of businesses that Kevin's talking about. Home Depot purchased the Avon properties, 13 acres of property, and they purchased it. The city didn't pursue them, they bought it. There were other businesses that also wanted to buy it. But they identified that they want to be in this market in Pasadena, and they purchased the property. And they have a right, within the city's rules, to develop their property. We let them know, though, the concerns of area residents. And again, the Councilmember Masuda was very strong on that because people were concerned about traffic impacts and other impacts and the historic nature of the building. They've listened to us, and they are developing their project, their store, within those parameters. The city controls zoning, but we don't control private property. Private property can be developed within the zoning that the city sets. As to sales tax, it will generate a lot of sales tax. It will never, ever come close to what Avon did for the city of Pasadena. All the sales of Avon on the West Coast were all recorded as in Pasadena. We'll never see that again. But again, the city didn't pursue them for sales tax, but it will generate significant sales tax.
Hello there. I've got two questions. The first question concerns Hamilton Park. I think you guys have done a great job on the physical aspects as you've improved, but the fields are a mess. There's gopher holes all over it, and you can hardly play on it. I have children, grandchildren that play baseball there, and it's almost impossible. And what are you doing about that? I have a second question. Should I ask that now, or?
Well, I can answer.
It might be the same person, but also the Sierra Madre median, if you went by there, that's a mess. It's covered with gopher holes. There's no grass. Is anybody working on that?
As far as Hamilton, I'll answer Hamilton. I know our maintenance staffs are dealing with the gopher issue all the time. They're coming out from around the vicinity, and we're trapping them and then sending them away. But it's just ongoing maintenance with the gophers around that area. It's hard to our maintenance staff to try to conquer that. It's just an ongoing maintenance issue that we're dealing with. I know we've renovated the park several times, and no matter what, the gophers will always come back. I think the best we can do right now is just maintaining as much as possible and trying to keep up with them.
Let me try to respond to the question about the median islands. The Councilmember and I have been talking a lot about that recently. So during the height of the drought, the governor at the time made it illegal, basically, to water medians. Some cities still did it because they went and got reclaimed water, gray water, and other sources, but you can't use potable water to water the medians. The Public Works Department went through there. They capped the irrigation lines, and so we're in the condition that we're in. We've explored what options there are to essentially re-turf that area. The City Council years ago, again, as part of drought measures, also took action to ban watering of median islands. So one, it would require an action of the City Council to amend the municipal code. Then we could apply to the state and ask the state if we could get dispensation out from their rules. But there's also another issue, because that's actually not city park land. It sort of operates that way, but it's really a street easement for the purpose of the street. So we may not be able to pursue that either. I've been talking to the city attorney's office about the laws around that. There's been other suggestions, instead of putting down turf, maybe putting mulch, but we understand that some of the running teams from the area schools like to practice on there, and so they contact us and say, please don't put mulch because it's going to interfere with our activities. So it's something that we are looking at the urging of Councilmember Masuda. I'm not sure if we're going to have a different outcome, but we are currently studying that.
Could we get the update on the space bank and what's going on with all the environmental issues? We continue to get flyers about the radius and the concern with all the toxic chemicals.
Did you just get our city email, from Noreen? Are you on our email list? What I sent out is what's actually happening from the city's perspective. It's that we hired our own environmental company to look at the cleanup. They will be monitoring the cleanup so that they will let us know and let the residents know about what's going on. So that project was approved 5-3 by the council. I actually voted against it. I was against it because it was the aggregate of all the other developments that were around there. Panda, the Bell on the corner, the Halstead, and then the 550 units, apartment units, right next to the freeway, you know, that's, you know, we were talking about contamination in the soil now, but just being next to the freeway is unhealthy. And to say you have a park there, well, who's in the park? Kids. And so that's why I voted against it. But the council voted 5-3. You know you need 5 votes for something. It passed. So there will be 550 units going in there. But when the lady talked about affordable housing, it's going to have 83 units of affordable housing. And that's the good part. And so we have to go in that direction. The reason why it's that we are inclusionary housing is that we give then 15% for affordable housing. Our new law is 20%. So we're very pleased with that because going forward that will be the number, but that's what's happening with the space bank issue. You need the microphone. Noreen, where's the
It's with me because I
okay.
was waiting to ask a
You're
question.
next.
Two-part question, Mr. Masuda. The first is those that would like to see restriping on Sierra Madre Villa. We were informed by the Transportation Department that it needs to come from the City Council, and it would be nice to see your support to restripe that half-mile section of Sierra Madre Villa to return it to the way it was 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. The second part of my question is for my neighbors in East Eaton Wash who have been asking for a safe way to cross Sierra Madre Villa. And I know that a signal has been approved, but it isn't funded. So how about a crosswalk at Electric with flashing lights in a well-marked crosswalk?
I met with the president of East Eaton Wash. She's sitting right there, Laura Ellersick. We met with the engineer then, Norman Bacalino, and on the CIP, there is that signal that's been approved. It's not funded yet, but it's been approved. But in order to make that area safe, we're suggesting having a crosswalk. So look forward to that. I'm really supporting that. What was your other question? Oh, Sierra Madre Villa. Well, okay. I join your concern. Every single council member needs to go through what I went through with Sierra Madre Villa. As you know, that was just one of those things that just happened without us really knowing what was going on. Now that the Orange Grove Road Diet didn't go through, I think that's a high possibility that it can go back to what it was before. Two lanes going north, 2 lanes going south. The only thing good about what it is today, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but the good part of it was that there's a center lane to make a left turn, which we didn't have before. So I'm for your change of bringing it back. And as you know, transportation told us it's just paint. It could be changed. So I say that the fact that the Orange Grove Road Diet it's dead. There's a high possibility that it could turn back, but that would be up to transportation and the City Council.
I have a question of Kevin, please.
If you could look into your crystal ball. The things that are going on commercially are terrific for the city of Pasadena to refurbish some of the old buildings and build new ones. My concern and maybe a question is Proposition 13 and what Sacramento is trying to do in order to change that for the ballot in 2020. And my understanding is that they are trying to put another initiative on the statewide ballot for communities and children, which directly, if I understand correctly, increases the taxes for commercial buildings as opposed to homeowners. And do you see that either going through or passing, or is there going to be any kind of organization from the realtors or commercial realtors or even the cities to try and defeat this proposition or bring it to the attention of regular folks that the commercial buildings that we're looking at now are going to be have some of their taxes increased tremendously just to make things fair?
First of all, as a company, we're looking into the issue of Prop 13. Personally, and I know there's momentum behind the Prop 13 at a state level. It's obviously a need for whatever revenue that the state can generate, but from my personal perspective, the money has to come someplace. So if this initiative is passed with Prop 13, it is going to reassess the existing buildings, and that reassessment is going to result in increased taxes. The increased taxes are going to result in increased rent. And increased rent is going to, we're going to look at potentially higher vacancy or going to areas where the tax basis is a little bit lower. The struggle with Pasadena is you've got so much product, as I said before, that is sold. The tax base is very high already. So I don't necessarily see in this particular city a tremendous impact on the sales tax because, as I said earlier, 80% of the buildings have sold since 2013. But on a state level, it could be very, very big. As an organization, we're looking at it right now. I'm not sure necessarily they have a position on it, but it is definitely something that every commercial real estate company in the state and nationally is looking at because it becomes a slippery slope. If it's passed at the commercial level, then the next step you would think would be on the residential side.
Councilmember Masuda, I just wanted to clarify a point. I wasn't talking about affordable housing. It was supportive housing. I think Space Bank is affordable housing, and it's great. We're going to have some units there, but no supportive housing. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Gene, I was a little upset after I voted the last time. I'm talking to you, Gene.
Oh, me? Sure. So you got to speak up.
The last election, we voted for a property tax increase because we were reading in the paper that the schools in Pasadena were going to have to downsize from 5 to 3 or some such.
Yeah, that was Measure I and Measure J.
Yeah, my question is, did I get ambushed because I voted for that tax increase? Because they still downsize the schools, right? Did I read that? And when I vote for a tax increase and then they don't follow through, do they send that tax increase back or they spend it somewhere else?
What do you mean that there's no follow through? That's, I'm going to have to get.
Didn't I just read recently that they are getting rid of some of the schools?
Okay, let me, and Steve, you can jump in here if I get it wrong. Measure I was for the sales tax, that 3/4 cent sales tax. It was that, but we said as a council that 1/3 of it would go to PUSD. We kept that promise. That translates into about $7 million per year for PUSD. And that's $14 million that's for the city of Pasadena. There's actually a committee of the council and PUSD that works together about how those funds are to be spent. But those are true dollars that are going to PUSD. Steve, how many times have we sent money over there so far?
We send the money every month. What I would add to what the council member indicated is, as he mentioned, there were two ballot measures. One was the sales tax, one was an advisory measure. The advisory measure passed, if you will. It's just advisory, so there's no real path. The city council has been sending a third of the new revenue to the school district. The school district's budget, general fund budget's about $230, $240 million. So $7 million a year is good, but as a percentage of 240 million, it's a small percentage. But for that money, they would not have been able to provide LA County Office of Education a budget that shows that they have their required 3% reserve. And so the school district would have been immediately taken over by LA County Office of Education, and we would have lost local control. That's something that the city council didn't think was a good idea. It would depress property values, and so it's a good thing that voters approved Measure I and gave the council direction on Measure J. The school district is going through some very, very difficult financial times. Think about it. They have as many facilities today as they had when the district was twice as large in terms of students. So they've had to face the difficult decisions of closing schools, and now they're trying to figure out how to deliver the best services they can to their students, but is really untenable to maintain the same number of facilities. Think of all the operating costs when you really have about maybe 40% fewer students, 50% fewer students. It's very difficult for them.
They have lost 1,200 students, enrollments, in the last 5 years. When you're getting paid per enrollment, that's a lot of funds being lost. And that's the reality. Next.
Good evening. I had a question about a project that is not in District 4, but I think does have citywide significance, and that's the decision to separate the Gold Line from California Boulevard in terms of the grade separation of the traffic and the train traffic and road traffic. That's an opportunity, funding that became available once the 710 project finally was killed. And I understand there are limitations in terms of how that money could be used, the money that would otherwise have been going to the 710 tunnel. But the city's elected to allocate $230 million, which, putting in perspective, $230 million, just talked about $7 million out of an annual sales tax, a third of it going to the schools. $230 million for that single project. That money can go a long way in a lot of different uses, and I'd like to understand why that is the priority for the city with respect to those dollars.
It's a great question because it allows me an opportunity to correct some information. The city didn't allocate any money to that project. We'd love it if Metro or Caltrans gave us $230 million and the city council and the citizens can decide how to spend it. What we're talking about are dollars that, that Metro has for transit projects. So first and foremost, only transit projects. Cities that make up the metro area can submit projects for their consideration. Those of us that have been around long enough to remember when we got the Gold Line, originally many people wanted to see the Gold Line not at grade, not at street level, because there were concerns about safety, there were concerns about delay and impact on traffic. Unfortunately, at the time, the only financial way to make the project feasible was to do it at grade. Now, many, many years later, now that Metro has some money available and they've said to member agencies, what sort of projects would you like to see? And one of the projects that has been, of course, around since the inception of the Gold Line, back when it was called the Blue Line, was the grade separation at California. And so they've allotted money to that project. I don't even know if $250 million is enough. Because it would require acquiring some private property to to create what's called a shoe fly, where essentially the street kind of does kind of like a pregnant thing for a little while. Sorry, but to move the traffic while you build this bridge, and in effect, the street gets lower, and then the tracks get a little higher, and you create this separation. So they've earmarked the money. They haven't actually appropriated it. The city will never see the money. It doesn't come to us. Most likely Metro will do the project, although there's some talk that maybe the construction authority, Gold Line Construction Authority, might do it. But I just want everyone to understand, it's not like the city was given $250 million and we decided to use it here. It's really Metro made the decision.
I sit on the construction authority representing the city of Pasadena. So think of a great separation. So where the train is now, it's going to be up a little bit, and then the cars are going to be down a little bit. And that's the bridge effect. That's a great separation. So I guess we're all done, but we will stay for one-on-one questions. Thank you so much for being here.